But it's their America. It's their America, though.
It's whatever it is that they want. And by the way, there's other foundational aspects of America, and it was enslaving people. But we don't teach that. So it's weird how we teach certain fundamental foundations of our country and not that one, because that's bad to the folks who want to put up the 10 Commandments in all these schools. Maybe the shootings will go down because someone who wants to shoot up a school will be, there's the 5th commandment. That's right. Let me change my mind. Whatever, bro. Thank you, Jackson, for joining us on the Jackson and Jackson Thursday. Congrats again. I look forward to showing up on the podcast at some point, you guys.
Indeed you will. Indeed you will. I'm putting a plan together and we're going to get going.
Oh, yeah, you guys look out for that. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you guys also for being here with me today. Up next, you got the Young Turks and Kasparian and Cenk Uygur on a Thursday. Go check them out. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Woo! Get some! Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. Lots of crazy news. Is Herschel Walker going to jail? Well, maybe.
No, probably not.
Clarence Thomas with an epic case of corruption as well, but that one we already know, nothing will happen to him. Easy way to avoid a jail sentence is to be the judge.
Yeah, that's true. Or to be a person in a position of power that would require impeachment in order to lose that power.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, the fact that Congress never does anything is going to help a lot. And they certainly don't do anything to people in power. But there's a lot more where that came from. Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump might be partnering up on a project. So crazy news day, Casper.
Well, we begin with yet another story involving a Supreme Court justice and corruption.
Harlan Crow, this wealthy Republican donor, is making a series of tuition payments for Thomas's grandnephew, who Thomas was raising as a son. We don't know the exact dollar amount, but according to ProPublica, it could have been to the tune of $150,000.
$150,000 from a Republican mega donor to Justice Clarence Thomas so he can send his grandnephew to 2 different private schools. Now, again, we don't know the exact dollar amount, but before I give you the details of this incredible story, again, broken by ProPublica, I do want to remind you that Harlan Crow, that Republican mega donor, the billionaire, had been spending a lot more money in helping the Thomases jet set. Okay, like $500,000 a year just on one vacation that the Supreme Court justice's family would go on with Harlan Crow and his family. So the $150,000 sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, that's actually a drop in the bucket considering how much money this guy had funneled to the Thomases. With that said, let's get to the details of the private school situation. So in the video that you just watched, there was reference of Justice Clarence Thomas bringing his grandnephew in as one of his own, taking care of him as if it's his own child. So his grandnephew is Mark Martin, and unfortunately, his father was in prison for a drug-related case. And so since Clarence Thomas also had some difficulty in his childhood, he brings on his grandnephew and wants to give him a good life. So that was a kind thing to do, a good thing to do.
Yep.
Thomas gained legal custody of Martin and became his legal guardian around January of 1998, according to court records. Martin, who had been living in Georgia with his mother and siblings, moved to Virginia, where he lived with the justice from the ages of 6 to 9. So I think that's important context because I'm sorry, 6 to 19. I misspoke there. So that was basically his formative years. He's being taken care of by Clarence Thomas and his wife. Now by 2001, Clarence Thomas was disillusioned, unhappy with the public school system in the area. And at that point, he decided we need to put this, my grandnephew into private schools. So this is where the story gets good. Martin spent his junior year of high school at Hidden Lake Academy, a therapeutic boarding school in Georgia. Hidden Lake boasted 1 teacher for every 10 students and activities ranging from horseback riding to canoeing. Those services came at an added cost. At the time, a year of tuition was roughly, I can't even believe it, $73,000 plus fees. Back then, this is in the early 2000s.
Remember, I mean, he's a tiny little kid. This isn't college, this isn't graduate school. 73,000 back then is probably over 100,000 now, every year. That's an astounding amount of money. And I've never been privy to schools like this, so.
Nor have I.
And the name is so appropriate, Hidden Lakes. I guess this is where the super duper rich send their kids. And guys, this isn't like, oh, well, this tangential to Clarence Thomas because it's like a great grandnephew or something. No, legal guardian of the kid since he was 6 years old. Clear and proudly says that he raised him as a son. And I believe it. And by the way, again, to Anna's point, he should get a lot of credit for raising the kid. That's a wonderful thing to do. But when you're using a donor's money to send him to the most exclusive schools in the world, and at a bare minimum, even Harlan Crow admits they've spent at least $100,000 on these schools. And Anna, I know you've got a lot more, but I actually want to read you graphic 9 because that's Harlan Crow's statement about this, and I found this to be the most comical of all of the things.
And honestly insulting.
Yeah,
because
100%.
He's co-opting certain rhetoric to provide cover for the very obvious corruption and conflicts of interest here. So go ahead.
So here's how Harlan Crow's office responded to ProPublica's piece. Harlan Crow has long been passionate about the importance of quality education and giving back to those less fortunate.
Then pay your taxes.
Especially at-risk youth. It's disappointing that those with partisan political interests would try to turn helping an at-risk youth with tuition assistance into something nefarious or political. Wait a minute. He's living with a Supreme Court justice. What part of that is at risk?
Insane.
No, but was Clarence Thomas gonna do something to him, or Ginny Thomas, or their incredibly rich neighbors? I mean, he's basically calling him an at-risk youth because he's black.
That's exactly right. That is exactly what he's doing.
And by the way, Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas are against exactly this type of help for actual at-risk students.
No, but guys, that's, in my opinion, the most important point to make here. At-risk youth, I mean, in their minds, at-risk youth are at risk simply because their parents have failed them. And to be sure, in a lot of cases, that is part of it. However, at-risk youth are also at risk because of the lack of opportunities they have. And the lack of opportunities begin in the public education system that has been intentionally gutted by Republicans who do not want to pay taxes that adequately fund these public institutions. So with that said, let's get to actual numbers here. Because as I mentioned, Martin's only spent junior year of high school at Hidden Lake, okay? The rest of the time, he was at a different private school, and we should get into the numbers in regard to how much Harlan Crow had funneled to Justice Thomas so he can pay for this tuition. Crow Holdings LLC wired $6,200 to the school, Hidden Lakes, in July of 2009, the exact cost of the month's tuition. Imagine spending $6,200 a month on high school tuition. Anyway, the wire is marked Mark Martin in the ledger. The administrator at Hidden Lake told ProPublica that Crow wired the school money once a month to pay Martin's tuition fees, okay? So that went on for a year. But what about the rest of his high school experience? Where did he go? Well, we've got some details on that. For the rest of high school, Thomas sent Martin to Randolph-Macon Academy, which is a military boarding school 75 miles west of Washington, D.C., where he was in the class of 2010. The school, which sits on a 135-acre campus, charged between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, which is, I guess, a bargain compared to the other private school. Jeez, it's crazy. Okay, and so we've said it once, we're gonna say it again because this is also important. Like, you can try to estimate how much money Harlan Crow funneled to Justice Thomas for this tuition money, but the exact total Crow paid for Martin's education over the years remains unclear. If he paid for all 4 years at the two schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000. However, ProPublica spoke to Martin. They interviewed Thomas's great grandnephew as well. And it appears that at some point in Martin's childhood, Thomas was paying for private school himself. Martin told ProPublica that Thomas sold his Corvette, his most prized car, to pay for a year of tuition, although he didn't remember when that occurred.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so Sam Alito did an interview where he was crying about how the Supreme Court justices are under attack. But all they did was bribery, and now all of a sudden people are criticizing us. What are we supposed to do, right? And so, well, you're supposed to be honest. And then he said, this is delegitimizing the court, the attacks against us. No, that's just journalism. That all of that stuff actually happened, right? You can't delegitimize the court yourself by having Clarence Thomas. Look, a lot of people writing in, like Twitch Micro on Twitch wrote in, that's old school bribery. I'm not holding my breath for consequences. And that's exactly the point.
Yes.
And there's gonna be no consequences. We already know it. Justice Roberts is gonna protect him. Obviously, Alito and the other right-wing thugs are gonna protect him. Congress isn't gonna do anything. And then everybody's gonna get disillusioned with the Supreme Court and think, oh, I guess now they're just allowed to take bribes, right? And then Alito will come and say, that's your fault for reporting things that we're doing. No, that's your fault for being a crook.
Yeah, exactly right. And so for any consequences to occur, you would need Congress to act, because the only way to, I guess, punish a Supreme Court justice who has a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court is to impeach them, similar to how Congress would need to impeach the President of the United States. So the House of Representatives would need to bring forth charges. After they vote on the charges, they kick it over to the Senate, and they would have to convict the Supreme Court justice on the charges, and that's just not gonna happen. And so it's just such a significant flaw in the system, Cenk, because if there isn't any accountability, they're just gonna do what they want, and it appears that's exactly what's happening. I mean, you have Ginny Thomas in bed with the individuals who planned the riots on January 6th, and Justice Thomas refuses to recuse himself, because guess what? He can. What's gonna happen? What are we gonna do about it? And by the way, the final thing I gotta mention is after Watergate, there were, important financial disclosure rules passed, right? So Justice Thomas is supposed to disclose these gifts. And when it comes to Harlan Crow, he has failed to do so. So he has broken the rules when it comes to the financial disclosures, and nothing's gonna happen to him.
Yep. So, and it's interesting because he did disclose some of the payments that he made for the kid in other instances, but when it came to Harlan Crow, he hid them. So that shows you intent to hide, because he knows that what they're doing is deeply wrong. And so, look, and Harlan Crow did have business in front of the court. We covered that previously on the show. And of course, Harlan Crow is a massive conservative and cares about all of the business cases in front of the Supreme Court and stands to profit from a lot of them. So for him as a billionaire, this is a drop in the bucket, and it's an excellent investment to make. And remember, Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas are not lifelong friends. Harlan Crow reached out to Thomas after he got on the Supreme Court and befriended him. And how did he befriend him? By giving him tons of money. Look, there's the giant vacations, there's now this tuition, et cetera. But to me, probably the worst of them is that Harlan Crow finances the organization that Ginny Thomas works for, and where she gets a giant salary. That's coming directly from Harlan Crow. I mean, if that isn't bribery, what is bribery? I mean, he's directly funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone the money that he used to buy Clarence Thomas's mom's house and do improvements, et cetera. This is as clear-cut case of corruption as you can get. But the great irony here is that the Supreme Court legalized bribery for politicians back in 1976 and 78 in two landmark cases, saying that, yeah, corporations and individuals can give unlimited money to politicians. And so now they say, oh, we're gonna police ourselves? We let everybody else be corrupt. Of course we're gonna let ourselves be corrupt. So no, they're not gonna do anything about it. And yes, every institution we have gets delegitimized by these crooks who commit the corruption in the first place and destroy any kind of belief in our systems. And then they cry about it afterwards, like, you don't respect us enough. You didn't earn it, brother. You didn't earn it.
Hell no. I mean, who wants to respect crooks? They're crooks, right? They have sold out our institutions for personal gain. And look, obviously it's difficult to point to exactly what kind of quid pro quo happens in these situations. But let's talk about just quickly some of the benefits that Harlan Crow has gotten from Justice Thomas through his rulings. So Harlan Crow, he's a big real estate guy. That's how he has made all that wealth. And so he had a big problem with the COVID moratoriums as it pertains to rent. So The Lever did a great piece, as always, about this. Thomas helped kill eviction ban threatening benefactor's business. And that benefactor, of course, is Harlan Crow. Let's go to the next graphic here. So in August of 2021, Thomas was one of the 6 justices who voted to strike down a federal administrative moratorium on evictions, originally enacted in September of 2020 by the CDC to halt the spread of COVID-19. In June of that year, in June, Thomas was one of the 4 justices. So June before that ruling in August, he was one of the 4 justices who voted to end the moratorium, but the majority actually voted to keep the moratorium in place because it was set to expire the following month. It didn't expire the following month, and in August, that is when the majority of conservative justices decided to strike down the CDC's rent moratorium. By July, between the two rulings, Crow Holdings, which owns apartment buildings, student housing, and manufactured housing nationwide, was cited in congressional testimony for being one of the country's most frequent eviction filers, despite the moratorium. Like, not only did Harlan Crow hate the moratorium, and very likely had influence over justices like Thomas to essentially lift the moratorium. When the moratorium was in place, homeboy didn't even care, and he was evicting people anyway. That's who these people are. But I'm sure he's very concerned about disadvantaged youth, at-risk youth in the country. I'm sure he's very worried about that.
Yes. Yeah. One of our members on YouTube wrote in, Supreme Court justices for sale, get it while they're hot, get it while they're hot. If you act now, they'll throw in Gorsuch for free. Okay, no, the Federalist Society is basically, it's not just for right wingers, it's not just for religious zealots, it's mainly for corporations as a way of purchasing the entire Supreme Court. I wrote about this in my book, tyt.com/justice is how you can pre-order it. Chapter 4 is all about how we lost our democracy, and this is exactly how we lost it. In 1971, Lewis Powell wrote a memo saying, why don't companies take over the Supreme Court, and that way we don't even have to pass any laws. We could just install activist judges to do our job for us.
Mission accomplished.
That is exactly what they have done, and this is the natural consequence of it.
When we come back from the break, we're gonna tell you about how 3 different McDonald's franchises were cited for breaking child labor laws. One of the franchises was employing kids as young as 10 years old. That and more coming up.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to our members first. Jenks Left Tricep of Fury writes in, once again, the untouchable elites take care of one another and are not accountable to the American people. And to top it off, they rub our faces in it and laugh, just as a joke in this country. Unfortunately, that's where we are today. And when anyone actually accurately points that out, the people in power say it is the fault of the people pointing it out, and that they just kept quiet about the corruption, then our institutions would still be intact. That's not how it works, okay? But certainly, to be fair to them, it is how it's worked for the last 40, 50 years where the media was complicit. Cats on Dragon says, can I work at this school? I wanna go horseback riding and canoeing. Maybe I need to be a Supreme Court justice. Well, that's one way to get into the school. One way is to be super rich and the other way is to be in power and have the super rich bribe you. So, not a bad idea. Mickey C. the Silver Dragon says, while they want us to ignore the obvious crimes, let's not forget that they're supposed to avoid even the appearance of corruption. Mickey, excellent point, right?
But it's kind of like the congressional disclosure rules pertaining to trading individual stocks, right? You can pass the laws, you could pass the rules, but if there's no enforcement mechanism, it doesn't matter. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's the scam that they've been playing, right?
Yeah. And Roberts, in every one of these cases, like, oh, golly gee, there was nothing I could do, right? So, by the way, he investigated who the leak was. Remember, they leaked the Dobbs case, and then he came back with, oh, we couldn't find out. You know what that means? That means a right winger did.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the prime suspect is Alito himself, and he's such a filthy liar. I saw that interview that he did. It's like, oh my God, I'm so outraged by the leak. I guess we'll never know, though. I guess we'll never know. But boy, I'm so mad about it. Oh, did it cement my decision and make it nearly impossible for the other conservative justices to turn around? Oh yeah, that's so outrageous. The Wall Street Journal didn't include the snickering. All right, Mickey, $100 Blue Apron gift card. I should have made that point in the show, and I'll probably tweet about it. So thank you, excellent point. So now let's go to Twitch. Owen the Schmoopy Dragon says, I wonder if Marjorie Taylor Greene would say that Thomas isn't a real father. Ooh, good point. She says that anyone who isn't biological father or mother doesn't count. Angel 86 Rod says, mentally I get tired of hearing these stories because tomorrow it'll be just more and more with no justice. How do you all cope?
I don't.
Yeah,
at this point.
It's tough, brother. And anytime we point it out, the establishment roars back and says, no, you guys are illegitimate. Just there is no corruption. And so you have to go through that torture of gaslighting every single day on top of the bad news. Mandalorian 84 says, I'm not mad that the rich and the elites have access to great education. I'm just mad that the rest of us don't.
Exactly.
Bingo, bingo. Look, guys, it isn't about being better. Those are great schools. I'm happy that those kids get to go to those schools. But we got to give everybody the opportunity, and they just won't do it. Jep 5 says, what is a kid at risk of? Affluenza? Great point. Octo Squiddy says his most prized car, implying he has multiple others that are still prized, but not quite as fancy.
I know, but poor guy, he had to do away with that Corvette.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Jason Walker. He just became a member by hitting the join button below the video. But get a load of these American Euros. Canadian Moose Rider gifted 1 Young Turks membership on YouTube. Vicky Gray gifted 5, and Chris Birch gifted another 5. You guys are amazing. Thank you for supporting the community and getting membership to more people so they can get all of our shows, watch anytime they want, and spread the word. I love it. Casper.
Well, we are seeing even more of these child labor violations, so let's talk about it. Three Kentucky-based McDonald's franchises have been fined for violating child labor laws. Believe it or not, there are still some child labor laws in the country, and these 3 franchises managed to violate them, even though we're talking about Kentucky here. But it's precisely the slap on the wrist that these franchises received that honestly incentivizes them to continue exploiting workers, and in this case, children. So let's give you the details on what's been reported here. So Louisville-based Bauer Food LLC and Bell Restaurant Group 1 LLC, as well as Archways Richwood LLC of Walton, Kentucky, were assessed a total of $212,754 in civil penalties for the violations. Now, that might sound like a pretty hefty fine, right? It sounds like this is divvied up among 3 different McDonald's restaurants. But no, the 3 franchises operate a total of 62 McDonald's locations across Kentucky, Indiana, Maryland, and Ohio. So that's a lot of stores, and when you think about, the profits they get as a result of exploiting workers, underpaying them, taking advantage of literal teenagers and even kids in this case, as young as 10. Well, let's actually compare the profits to what the fine is. Anyway, let's tell you what they did wrong, why they got fined in the first place. So apparently all 3 franchises employed a total of 305 children to work more than the legally permitted hours and perform tasks that are prohibited by law. Bauer Food LLC, for instance, had employed 24 minors under the age of 16 to work more than legally permitted hours, including 2 10-year-old children who were employed at a McDonald's in Louisville. Is this what we want in our country? 10-year-olds working at a fast food restaurant? Some kids didn't even get paid, that should be mentioned. So 2 children were employed but not paid. And were given responsibilities such as preparing and distributing food orders, cleaning the store, working at the drive-through window, and operating a register. Investigators also learned that one of the 2 children was allowed to operate a deep fryer, a prohibited task for workers under 16 years old. But I'm not even done. There's even more to get into here. But before I do, Cenk.
Yeah, so I've got a 10-year-old. The idea of her operating a deep fryer is crazy. It's super dangerous. I would never, ever allow that, right? But why are 10-year-olds working at these places? Because people are desperate, because wages are so ridiculously low and people can't make a living. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. That's $15,000 a year. if you worked a whole year with no time off at all.
Cenk, I have to bring this up.
Yeah.
There was a study that was just done looking at the homeless population in Los Angeles, and you wanna know what they found out? 9% of the unhoused individuals in LA are working at fast food restaurants. 9%, that's a huge percentage of them.
Yeah, and so that's the working poor. They're trying to do what is right, but you just can't make enough money at these starvation wages, so they're homeless. Look, when I ran for office, there was somebody who was a volunteer for me, social worker, and had to live out of his car because the wages are too damn low, right? But no one in power is ever gonna do anything about it. Instead, they're like, give me your 10-year-olds. Let's go, let's put them to work. And guys, we're at full employment. That's why they're going to the kids. There's an easy fix to this. You know what it is? Pathway to citizenship. We could have a rational immigration system that says, hey, listen, you don't just get to come in here and break the law, etc. But there is a pathway. Hey, and the last proposal was if you work for 14 years, that's like a lifetime. Then you finally make it so that you can get a green card, etc., and be on the path to citizenship. That's not enough. We need the workers anyway. So why wouldn't we just go to the people who are desperate and hungry and want to provide for their family and love this country and came here for hope and do it in the legal way?
We know why.
We know why, because they're brown and we don't want it. We've got the great replacement theory. We don't want white people replaced. So instead, we're gonna replace them with frickin' 10-year-olds and drive them into these dangerous work conditions.
Look, I don't think it's a coincidence that all of these policies are happening simultaneously. I think this is on purpose. This is my opinion. But you have women's reproductive rights taken away, which means that women are going to be forced to carry pregnancies to term and have children that they might not have the financial situation to actually provide for. There's that. You have the loosening of child labor laws. This is all happening simultaneously. And you have the anti-China rhetoric. You have the discussions about what's happening at the border. They don't want a pathway to citizenship. Of course they don't want that. And look, Republicans pretend like they have a big problem with undocumented immigrants in the country, but their donors don't. Their donors love exploiting that labor force. And by the way, if they're illegal, it's easier to exploit them and pay them less money. When you're legal, there are some rights in this country, right? Some protections.
So look, two things about that, because it's related to this story. There's this mythology they put out there. They go, look, we're against undocumented immigration because they're taking our jobs. But wait a minute, we're at record low unemployment. The economists call this at this point basically full employment. And in fact, the employers are complaining we don't have enough people to hire, right? And they're going to hire 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 10-year-olds, etc. So wait, if we have open borders, as the Republicans say, oh my God, the caravans are coming, they're flowing over the borders, it's unbelievable, etc. And they were supposed to take our jobs, but apparently they didn't because we're at full employment. So it was a lie all along. Don't make your kids go to work, force the politicians to pass laws that allow us to get paid decent wages. That's actually the answer to all of this.
Just to give you some more details about one of the other franchises, so that was a Bell Restaurant Group LLC. They were discovered to have employed 39 workers between the ages of 14 and 15 to work outside of and for more hours than the law permits. Some of these children worked more than the daily and weekly limits during school days and school weeks. And the employer even allowed 2 of them to work. This part really makes me enraged. Work during school hours, meaning these kids weren't going to school, they were working at this McDonald's instead. Okay. So Archways Richwood LLC is another one, allowed 242 minors between the ages of 14 and 15 to work beyond the allowable hours, federal officials said in a prepared statement. And this keeps going on, guys. Like this is, you wanna know something crazy? I go on YouTube to see if there's any other news reporting on this. There were a few news reports, local news reports mostly. But what really stood out to me was how many other examples from previous years there were of McDonald's in particular violating these child labor laws. They keep doing it over and over again. And the reason why they keep doing it over and over again is because the punishment doesn't fit the crime. They are profiting off of this practice. They are profiting off of exploiting these kids. And so when you slap them with a fine, it's like, all right, cost benefit analysis, we're gonna keep violating because the profits outweigh the fine significantly.
100%. And by the way, you think the politicians don't know that? They know that. And they take money from the fast food industry, the National Restaurant Association. Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin famously went and collected checks right after they voted against a higher minimum wage. They went to that organization and said, give me the bribes. I mean, they did it right in front of everybody. It was the most amazing thing in the world. So that's why the government officials go, give them a tiny little fine. You give them a $200 million fine instead of a $200,000 fine, all of a sudden they're not gonna be hiring kids anymore, right? But the politicians don't mind it either. Look, I'm gonna read one thing from our YouTube member we have. It's both funny and tragic, and it gives you a good button to this story. Leon Russo wrote in, did the kids get a Happy Meal?
Jesus.
I mean, that's the age you get a Happy Meal. Instead, they're having to serve the Happy Meal so that their family can make ends meet. That's because we have a brutal system where we are getting so badly squeezed that huge percentages of countries working for starvation wages and having to have their kids go to work as well.
Go to work in some cases instead of school. But I wanted to get into one other angle to this story that's specific to Iowa. So let's talk about that. The trend of exploiting children, literal children, for labor is unfortunately becoming more and more popular in several red states. Many of them have loosened child labor laws, and Iowa is on the path to do so as well. In fact, the Senate, the state Senate in Iowa, has just advanced a bill that would in fact loosen child labor laws. So they're looking to basically have children as young as 16 work in jobs involving roofing, demolition, manufacturing. This is hard labor, okay? Initially, they wanted children as young, or teenagers as young as 14 to be able to do these jobs. But eventually they're like, all right, maybe that's too much, too fast, let's go to 16. So it's advanced in the Senate, and it looks like this is very likely to pass. We'll see how it plays out. But I think More Perfect Union did a really, really great job in not only covering what's happening in Iowa when it comes to this child labor deregulation, but more importantly, explaining who's behind these efforts. Let's watch.
Why are lawmakers actually doing this?
The bill was really spearheaded by the Restaurant Association. We sort of came along. We were asked to be, we were invited to come along.
That's Brad Epperly, a lobbyist who works for big corporate clients like the Iowa Grocery Industry Association. He's outright admitting to us that the Iowa Restaurant Association was the driving force behind this bill. This child labor law rollback originated at a meeting of the Iowa Workforce Development Board, which is overseen by Governor Kim Reynolds. Most of its members are corporate CEOs and lobbyists, and they meet up several times a year to come up with new policies. This bill was a product of a meeting in November. The WDB is chaired by Jay Iverson, executive officer of the Association of Iowa Builders, hence the emphasis on kids using bandsaws on work sites. Lobbyists from the Iowa Association of Business and Industry are well represented on the board, which gives member corporations like John Deere and Google seats at the table. And of course, no race to the bottom would be complete without the Koch-funded Americans for Prosperity and Opportunity Solutions Network.
So this is how the game is played. This is how laws get passed. It's not about doing right by the very individuals who elected these politicians into power. It's not about representing them. It's about representing the moneyed interests that pad their pockets with this campaign cash.
Guys, if you wonder why I go on such a giant warpath against mainstream media fairly regularly on this show, because as you see the money flowing, it's definitely coming from the Restaurant Association and the Koch brothers, et cetera.
And developers.
It's an organized effort, and they're pushing those corporate contributions to the politicians who are passing the laws. What you see in media is, oh, they're just trying to give the kids a chance to work over the summer and get some experience so they can get a better job later. But that's just mythology, and it's not even close to true. So when you look at how the sausage is actually made, which is pretty appropriate for this story, you realize, oh, no, this isn't about, oh golly gee, some of the families in Iowa thought they should work a little bit in construction when Bob's 16 and get some experience. No, they're like, hey, the construction industry, the restaurant industry are like, hey, we need more workers and we need cheap workers. Get us those little kids, we don't have to pay them that much. There was another story we did a couple of weeks ago when they found out what jobs are they. Oh, is it like, hey, at Burger King and you're just flipping burgers for a second when you're 17 for extra cash? No, most of the kids were working at meat packing industry with blood all over the floor, severed heads, etc. And why were they working in meat packing? Because they need the money.
Because they're desperate.
Yes, because their families are desperate. And so they need a little bit of extra cash. And corporate power buys off politicians, which creates desperate situations through the laws that they pass rigging the system. And then when you get desperate enough, they go, now give me your kids. This is an absolutely sick system.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to what's currently transpiring in Louisiana. The Louisiana state lawmakers have decided to reject a bill that would raise the state's minimum wage. At the same time, though, in fact, the day before that, the Louisiana state legislature decided to move forward with a bill that would raise their own pay by more than double. Now, this story has some interesting details. The lawmakers in Louisiana are not paid handsomely like our federal lawmakers. In fact, they're paid very little. But that should give them some perspective on what it's like to try to survive on very little pay. Now, Louisiana has no state minimum wage, meaning that whatever the federal minimum wage is, that is what is enacted in the state of Louisiana. So that's why a Democrat in the state legislature in Louisiana introduced a bill in the state's House specifically to raise the state's minimum wage to $10 an hour, which seems reasonable. Now, the minimum wage would then rise over the next few years to reach $14 an hour by 2028. That was the proposal. Now, minimum wage increases are, generally speaking, extremely popular in both red and blue states. If you can recall, Florida, which is a solid red state at this point, voted through a ballot initiative to increase their state's minimum wage. A 2019 study by LSU's Public Policy Research Lab found that 81% of Louisianans support a state minimum wage hike. That, of course, would be more than $7.25. And according to the US Census Bureau data, from 2019, Louisiana's poverty rate is 19%. So poverty is a big problem. Obviously, people deserve to get paid more and it would create a better economic situation. But the bill was opposed by Republicans who parroted the usual talking points. So one of them said this: I don't see that a bill to raise the state's minimum wage solves those problems, especially not solving it as the free market can. Now, the free market's been working its magic in Louisiana, and 19% of the population there is living in poverty. Is that the wonderful free market that's being referred to here?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. First, Louisiana and Mississippi are the two poorest states. So as Anna pointed out, how's that free market working out for you? No, it's just an excuse they use to make sure you get none of the money and the people at the top get all of the money. So now, when you talk about the Louisiana state legislators, they should definitely be paid more, because I'm worried, and I think they're crooks, by the way, and I'm worried about them, and I think that they're bought off by business interests. So why in the world am I saying they should get paid more? Because if you get paid really low salary, you're gonna want to bribe. Yeah. And you're gonna want to do other jobs, and people are gonna give you other jobs, knowing that you can pass state laws that'll make them millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. It's an open invitation to corruption. So I'm not, in this case, I'm not against the legislators making more money. But you can't say, hey, I'd like to make more money, but the citizens that I'm supposed to represent, oh hell no, no, they shouldn't get more money. And it's not like Louisiana's like a rich state or anything like that, meaning in terms of their workers. No, they're at the bottom.
They are.
So you can't make an argument that the wages are too high in Louisiana. It's absurd. And they're saying, oh, don't worry about it. I mean, it's $7.25 because of the federal law. But most people don't get that. Really? Because it seems like in your state, they get the worst salaries along with Mississippi. So this is all an effort to make sure that they keep the costs of their business benefactors low.
Yes.
because those are the people who bribe them.
So let's talk a little bit about how much lawmakers in the state of Louisiana make for their salaries and how much they increase their salaries after, or actually right before they decided to kill a bill that would increase the minimum wage in the state. So let's go to graphic 4 here. The House and Governmental Affairs Committee voted to advance House Bill 149 by Representative Joe Marino to the House Appropriations Committee. The bill would increase the lawmakers' wages from $16,800 to $40,000. The bill would go into effect next term. So just to do the math real quick, if the salary is $16,800, that means that they're making around $1,400 a month. So you're right, I mean, that's not enough money, but I have no problem with them getting paid more for the reasons that you correctly outlined, Cenk. But when you yourself have experienced how difficult it is to survive on low pay, how do you then turn around and tell minimum wage workers to kick rocks? And look, you tell them that, easily tell them that, because what's on the top of mind for them is who their donors are.
100%. Look, if you didn't have corruption, those folks would be much more predisposed to helping people that are in a similar economic situation. Now, a lot of these folks have second jobs, so it's not like they're trying to live off of that amount of money, but some of them might not, okay? And there's also a racial component, unfortunately, in Louisiana, because there's a perception that if you increase the minimum wage, it's mainly gonna go to the black citizens. And so a lot of folks don't want that, so they say, no, I don't want it. Even if in reality, majority of it goes to the white citizens. There's that perception, and unfortunately, it's a double whammy because they use it to keep your wages low and to keep you happy about how your wages are low.
Jesus.
So it's really it's horrible in every way. Now, at the national level, it's an open disaster, and that is why you have a place like Louisiana. That is a symptom of the disaster that we started at the federal level. Minimum wage has not been raised since 2008. Obama did not raise it at all when he was in charge. Biden actively killed theoretically his own proposal at $15 minimum wage that was in the COVID relief bill. He had the 2 Delaware senators vote against it. As soon as he got into office, he said, we're not doing that. So he never meant it. He's not in favor of a higher minimum wage. Democrats are liars. When we find a politician that's honest, that's breaking news. So here, I'll tell you that in this case, Bernie Sanders is going to introduce a bill for $17 minimum wage. Now for the corporatists, they'll say, oh, whoa, you were just saying $15 a minute ago, now it's $17. Yeah, because the last time they proposed it was 2 years ago. And now with inflation, that $15 is $17.
Exactly.
Right?
Wait, hold on. Is this a scoop? Did we just scoop?
No. I actually did know that ahead of time, but I waited, and it is in the news today. Okay, and so the $17 is a great proposal. Thank you, Bernie, for bringing that back. Now, look, here's how it'll play out, and here's how it should play out. Just real quick, Bernie will propose it. I don't know if Schumer will even allow a vote on it. Because he doesn't believe in it, he hates it, he loves business interests. And if they did allow a vote on it, it probably wouldn't pass the Senate because there's 8 corrupt Democrats that already voted against a higher minimum wage. They agree with their Republican colleagues. So then you'd go to the House, even if it somehow miraculously passed in the Senate and the Republicans control the House, they'd kill it because the Republicans hate the idea of higher wages for an average American. But if it made it to Biden, I'm not even sure that he would sign it because these guys are all crooks. They all take money from all of the companies like the Restaurant Association, et cetera, that are most directly affected by a higher minimum wage. But if you turn on television, they'll tell you, oh, they're just honorable people going back and forth. So what could Bernie do? He could introduce the bill and then say, if Schumer doesn't allow a vote on it, he's corrupt. That would make giant national news because the media loves drama.
They do love drama. And I mean, I always think back to when AOC called out Joe Manchin's corruption. And like clockwork, Joe Manchin goes on CNN and Dana Bash asks about the corruption.
That's so easy. Yeah. You just have to have the courage to call out your colleagues, your beloved colleagues. And then after you put Schumer under the pressure, if it goes to Biden, you say, well, Biden said he was for the higher minimum wage. Was he telling the truth? Or was my friend, President Biden, lying? Drama, puts a giant spotlight on Biden. Did you mean it? Or were you lying? But I love Bernie. He's the only one putting this forward. I appreciate it, but he will not do those tactics because it would be impolite.
There needs to be some strategy among progressive lawmakers. They actually have to work together and organize something and have a well-orchestrated plan to apply the appropriate amount of pressure to get these types of policies passed. You have to actually be a tactician, right?
And I can tell you this too, from behind the scenes, there's a number of progressives that have a plan to get anything passed in the next 2 years. Zero. It's not that they had chances of passing it as zero, it's that they don't even have a plan to pass it.
And that's disheartening, to say the least. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we'll give you an update on Enrique Tarrio, the former head of the Proud Boys. Not a good day for him.
Back during the social break, let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Planes and Palm Trees writes in, on point as always. Thanks for what you do, guys. You also get the credit because anytime you use Super Chat, you sign up for membership, etc. It's you guys that are getting this news out here. We do it together. Yes.
I have to mention something. So my team sent me this tweet from Senator Dianne Feinstein's Twitter account. I highly doubt she tweeted it. But it says this: the Senate continues to swiftly confirm highly qualified individuals to the federal judiciary, including 7 more judicial nominees who were confirmed this week. There has been no slowdown. Basically, no, I'm not gonna step down.
No, that's just not true.
It's not true.
And also, that's not Dianne Feinstein. It's someone on her staff pretending to be the United States Senator from California.
Jesus.
It's disgusting and barely a peep, as always, because the powerful cannot be disturbed. Jason Ray says, the manager-worker power dynamic, I'm sure no pedos will exploit with children they manage, because the GOP are for saving the kids and all, right? So they say they're for the children, and that's why they have the QAnon thing and abortion and all that stuff. And then they say, oh, we don't mind if they get killed in school though, because we like our guns more. And we don't mind if they go into dangerous work conditions, back to the mines for the kids. But yeah, we're pro-children. Are you?
They like to use children as props to get what they want policy-wise. They like to use children as props to fearmonger about the transgender community, to fearmonger about drag queens, to fearmonger about anything. And to basically demonize and persecute individuals they just don't like. That's what they use children for. It's pretty sick.
All right, Eric Sutter writes in, hi Jen Anna, may the 4th be with you, and my wife as well. Can I get a birthday shout out for her? Well, happy birthday, Mrs. Sutter.
Happy birthday.
And I love May the 4th be with you. Maybe I'll tell you guys in the bonus episode for the members a cutesy story about that today with my daughter. R. Stone writes in, at least we know why Lady Justice is blind, referring to the Clarence Thomas story. Yes, it's supposed to be because she's impartial, but in reality now it's, oh, I don't see the corruption. I don't see the corruption, so great point. T. Williams CA wrote in, this is the natural evolution of Citizens United.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's true as well. Axel the Ghost says, I was an at-risk youth when my parents could barely feed me. Did Republicans help? Nope.
They exacerbated it.
Yeah, no, the at-risk youth are only going to be helped if they're already incredibly rich and have Supreme Court justices taking care of them. At risk my ass. The Freedom House 1984 says we need to put aside our small differences and unite, demand a government that represents us. Well, that would be terrific. Unfortunately, the right wing and sometimes the left wing, when they do the distraction techniques and they get into identity politics or M&Ms or whatever, it works brilliant.
It does, yeah. They're hot button controversial topics. And to be sure, a lot of the culture war issues that the Republican Party brings to the forefront actually do have significant consequences for the people they're targeting.
Yep. Jean Ann writes in, I wonder how many other disadvantaged youth Harlan Crow has helped. I'd wait for a list, but I'd bet there isn't one. Yeah, just coincidentally, the one at-risk youth I found was in the Supreme Court Justice's home. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and it's raining memberships. A good time to watch TYT. You might get a free membership out of it. Gail Hefner gifted a membership. The Fish Dancer gifted 2, and Tylandell 73 gifted 10. Thank you guys for looking out for one another, helping someone you don't know. That way, everybody can access all of our shows if they're a member, and help support the show. So you guys are the best. We appreciate it, Anna.
Well, we've got some positive updates in regard to the Proud Boys and their involvement on January 6th. Ex-Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio has officially been convicted of seditious conspiracy for his role in orchestrating the Proud Boys' involvement of the Capitol riots on January 6th. So the charge does carry a possible 20 years in prison. We don't know what the judge is going to decide in the sentencing, but a jury in Washington, D.C. heard from dozens of witnesses over more than 3 months. So this was a lengthy trial, to say the least. Now, Tarrio actually wasn't there on the day of the Capitol riots. He was someplace else because he had been arrested 2 days earlier in an entirely separate case and was ordered to stay away from Washington, D.C. But prosecutors argued in the trial that Tarrio was very much involved in the planning leading up to the Capitol riots that took place. Tarrio was also a top target of what has become the largest Justice Department investigation in American history, and that's according to the Associated Press's reporting. He led the neo-fascist group known for their street fights and all of that. To basically go to Trump's rally and then later, barge into the Capitol and do what they did. So according to the AP's reporting, as Proud Boys swarmed the Capitol, Tarrio cheered them on from afar, writing on social media, "Do what must be done." In a Proud Boys encrypted group chat later that day, someone asked what they should do next, and Tarrio responded, "Do it again." "Make no mistake," Tarrio wrote in another message, "we did this." Oops. And that didn't play out so well for him in the trial, even though he later started to cooperate with the authorities in basically ratting out his friends and getting them in trouble as well, which I'm pretty grateful for. I'm glad he did that.
So 2 things about this. One is that line is gold for a prosecutor. Make no mistake, we did this. Well, hard to come back from that, brother.
Yep.
Okay, so now the second part of this is, at some point his defense attorney started to throw Donald Trump under the bus. And he's like, look, he told us to do it. He said literally on the debate stage, the whole country heard it, for the Proud Boys, stand by, right? And so they stood by and they got ready and they thought that they were Trump's army. And the lawyer's not wrong about that. That's all of that is absolutely true. And so, and they have the messages that they shared between each other, and they really thought they were Trump's army. And then when they got arrested for sedition, do you know how much Trump helped them?
Zero.
Zero, nothing. He raised over $200 million for a legal defense fund and didn't give them a dime. He's like, oh yeah, come on, suckers and losers. Come fight for me, try to overthrow democracy. Oh, later when he's facing up to 20 years in prison.
Yeah.
When you're facing 20 years in prison, you know what I'm gonna do for you? Nothing, you're an idiot, I used you. And yet all these suckers still go along with Donald Trump.
Well, yes and no, right? Because remember, when Trump was set to be indicted by Alvin Bragg, he urged his supporters to basically to protest, but we know what that means when Trump says it, right? To protest in front of the prosecutor's office. And they didn't. And I think it's because of the fact that he refused to offer any help or support after all these people, hundreds of people, ended up getting arrested for their part on January 6th, and dozens of them have already been convicted for the crimes they committed. I do want to just quickly give you the argument from Tarrio's lawyer. His name is Naib Hassan. He said this: it was Donald Trump's words, it was his motivation, it was his anger that caused what occurred on January 6th in your beautiful and amazing city. It was not Enrique Tarrio. They want to use Enrique Tarrio as a scapegoat for Donald J. Trump and those in power. Well, that argument did not work and Tarrio got convicted anyway, but I do think that mindset has seeped into the minds of Trump supporters, which is why they didn't take the bait when he urged them to protest.
Right, but those are among the most hardcore guys who, a lot of whom already got arrested. But Trump is still incredibly popular in the right wing.
Definitely, yeah.
Not one person, it seems, well, that's not fair. We just told you the people that did notice, but not very many people have noticed that Trump didn't help his most hardcore supporters at all. He just left them out there to dry. Now, if you're thinking, because a lot of the established people have no idea what the right wing actually thinks, and they think, oh, Trump can't possibly win. They still believe in fantasies like that. So if you think, well, Donald Trump didn't want to be associated with the January 6th people because that was an act of sedition. Now people have been convicted, including the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, and this is basically treason against the country. So Donald Trump probably doesn't want to be associated with that. No, whenever he sees them, he hugs them. He plays videos before his gatherings celebrating the January 6th guys. Brian Kilmeade the other day on Fox News said it was disgusting how much Donald Trump was wrapping himself around the January 6th rioters, right? The people who committed violence, people were killed, etc. But he's only doing that rhetorically because he just wants to take further advantage of them. But he has, again, not helped at all, as these guys might go to prison for decades, and he didn't lift a finger to help them.
When we come back for the second hour of the show, we'll talk a little bit about this ongoing border fight between Republicans and the Biden administration. The Biden administration made a pretty big announcement earlier this week about sending troops to the border. I want to give you the details on that and how Republicans have responded to it when we come back.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. Referred to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that Black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger Black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
We've been around for about 20 years, and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades. All right, back on TYT, guys. Cenk, Anna, and look at all these amazing people. Ingram gifted 5 memberships. Lena Green.
Wait, hold on. Amazing what people?
What did I say?
Pink. It sounded like you said pink people.
Oh, I don't think I said that, but if I did, that's hilarious. I don't know why I said that. Okay, anyway, Ingram gifted 5 memberships. Lena Green became a member. Chuck Fink became a member. The Fish Dancer gifted 2. I think that I might have read the rest. You guys are awesome. I love you guys for doing that. Every time, look, you see us saying something that you like and agree with and you want to get the word out, you made that happen if you're a member. We literally don't exist and we're not here if it wasn't for the members. So thank you guys, and you get all of our program. Hit the join button below the video on YouTube to become a member, or tyt.com/join. It's so easy to remember, tyt.com/join. We appreciate it. Anna.
Why don't we give you an update on what Biden plans to do at the southern border?
As long as the Biden administration keeps in place catch and release, he could send 1,500 troops, he could send 10,000 troops, he could send 100,000 troops.
Yet another example of a double standard where Republican lawmakers who are demanding the Biden administration get real tough at the southern border are never satisfied, even as Biden earlier this week announced that he will be sending 1,500 active duty troops and National Guard members to the southern border ahead of the expiration of Title 42. Now, of course, Title 42 was a directive that started under the Trump administration and essentially sealed the southern border, did not allow for asylum seekers to make their case for asylum. And the argument was, well, we're dealing with an emergency here. Coronavirus is a real threat. We want to stop the spread of coronavirus, so we're going to seal the border. Well, Biden comes into office and he kind of likes it and let Title 42 remain in place. Then when he was about to repeal it, all of a sudden Republican lawmakers freaked out about it and challenged him on the issue. And the Supreme Court decided to allow Title 42 to remain in place, but it's about to expire soon. So Biden is concerned about the Border Patrol agents being overrun by what is expected to be a huge influx of asylum seekers coming to the border. And he decided that the right way to solve this problem is to send the troops. Well, remember, Trump sent troops to the border and was applauded for that back in 2018. Republicans are speaking a little bit of a different tune here. So with that said, why don't we go to the next video to kind of see what I'm talking about.
Under Joe Biden, the 1,500 troops he's sending will accomplish nothing to secure the border, and they're not designed to, and here's why. The troops on the border are beneficial if you have a policy that when you apprehend someone, you deport them. Then the troops on the border are helpful for apprehending people coming across. As long as the Biden administration keeps in place catch and release, he could send 1,500 troops, he could send 10,000 troops, he could send 100,000 troops. It would do nothing to secure the border. Why? Because every illegal immigrant they encounter, they would hand over to the Biden administration, and the Biden administration would let them go.
So I got to give you guys some more context before I go to you, Cenk, because understand that what Biden is doing is he is literally following the law. Now, if the Republican lawmakers don't like our immigration laws, they could actually, do their jobs and engage with Democrats to pass policy, comprehensive immigration reform, but they failed to do that. So the idea that Biden should use the troops, active duty military, to round up asylum seekers and immediately deport them before they can even make a case is insane. Okay, we have laws. Asylum seekers who enter the country through ports of entry must have their day in front of an immigration judge who will make a determination as to whether or not they should be allowed into the country as asylum seekers, okay? We have a shortage of judges, which is why there's a massive backlog of asylum seekers. And by the way, Biden keeps playing this game with Republicans. He's doing their bidding. So one example is, before, if asylum seekers came into the country illegally, they would still get their day in front of an asylum judge. But not anymore. Biden has decided that if they do that, they're immediately deported. But if they enter through ports of entry, they have to have their case heard, unless you change the laws. But Republicans don't want to do anything, right? They don't want any compromise. They don't want a pathway to citizenship for folks who are already here. It's just so stupid. All of it is stupid. Biden pandering to Republicans is stupid. Republicans pretending like they don't know how this process works is stupid. It's incredibly frustrating.
So Anna's right. The military doing policing inside the United States is both illegal and unconstitutional. So there's no way that it could be done. That's why it's always theater. It's theater when Biden does it. It's theater when Trump does it. Although Trump would push the law, and if he could, he would have them do policing here. But there's other reasons. There's other factors that stop him from doing that. Okay. So why does Biden do it if he knows it's kind of useless? He can send 1,500 non-troops there. And by the way, they might actually be able to do policing if they aren't United States military. So why does he do this? For theater. So he could say, look at me, I'm Republican light. The world's worst political strategy. So then, did it appease Republicans? It's impossible to appease Republicans. Ted Cruz just told you, I don't care if you send 100,000 troops to the border. I don't care if there's a troop that covers every single part of the border and not one person comes through. I don't care. I'm gonna criticize you just the same either way. Because what do you think? Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham are gonna go, oh, good point, Joe Biden. You know what? Now we agree with you. Now that you've done what we asked you to do, we're not gonna move the goalposts at all. And we now are gonna tell everybody Joe Biden should get credit. Is that what you expected? No, okay, no one could expect that. Even Biden isn't that challenged, okay? So what they're trying to do is peel off a tiny percentage of Republican voters in the suburbs. They think, oh my God, if we're really tough on immigration, they'll ignore everything else and vote for us. That's a strategy that has never worked. It has never, ever, ever worked. And yet they still go straight into this. And what does it do? It costs you tons of votes in your base. Because you told your base for 4 straight years, look at this monster Trump sending troops to the border. We would never do that. He's such a bad guy. And now you do it and they go, oh, screw it. What did I vote against Trump for? Because remember, nobody voted for Biden. Everybody voted against Trump.
Exactly.
And then when you do the same things Trump did, what do you think's gonna happen?
Exactly.
They're gonna lose all the energy and incentive to vote for you. You're gonna cost yourself millions of votes trying to get 7 votes in the Republican suburbs.
No, that's exactly right. And that is, in my opinion, precisely the reason why you're worried about a matchup between Trump and Biden in 2024, because the Democratic establishment feels super confident in Biden being able to beat Trump. But what is Biden gonna fearmonger about when he has implemented or extended many of the policies that we hated from the Trump administration, including the theater of sending active duty military to our southern border. By the way, speaking of Senator Lindsey Graham, he had a very similar line. He referred to Biden's efforts as ridiculous theater. And when a reporter asked, well, what about the double standard here? You seem to be happy with Trump sending troops to the border. Let's see how Lindsey Graham responded to that question.
Did you feel the same about it being theater when Trump sent troops to the border in 2018?
I feel that Donald Trump did the best job in my political lifetime. When Donald Trump did something, it worked. Everything he did, as Ted suggested, worked. The triangle agreement with the 3 Northern Triangle countries where they would process asylum claims took the problem off the table.
So one thing that Trump did that Biden is not gonna do is he had active duty military literally block legal ports of entry so asylum seekers had no way of seeking asylum. That is what he did. So I'm guessing that's what Lindsey Graham is referring to, but of course he's not gonna be upfront and honest and state exactly what Trump did differently, which by the way, blocking them means that you are going against what the current federal laws are as they pertain to asylum seekers and immigration. With that said, I wanna have a little bit of fun because literally like, I don't know, a week prior to that, on April 27th, Trump was doing a rally and he slapped down Lindsey Graham in front of the crowd. Let's watch.
Lindsey Graham, the progressive from South Carolina. No, he's a progressive, but he's got some good things too.
Man, what kind of dirt does Trump have on Lindsey Graham? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, look, calling Lindsey Graham pathetic is too easy.
It is.
Right? So Donald Trump slaps him with the back of his hand, It's just like, it's an extra insult, right? Like, oh, look at this left-winger progressive, and then he gets the whole crowd to boo him and stuff. And Lindsey Graham, like the little sniveling snail that he is, he's like, hey, this is after Trump already bitch slapped him with the back of his hand, okay? No. Lindsey Graham saying, my favorite part of this whole video was when they asked him the question that busts him on his hypocrisy about hey, didn't Trump do the same thing? Look at Ted Cruz's face as he hears a good question. He's looking down and he's nervous. And he's like, oh no, that's a good question. What are we gonna do, right? And when Lindsey Graham pauses and goes, well, Donald Trump's just the greatest president ever, right? Ted Cruz is like, yeah, okay, good answer, good enough, that'll distract him. He did the greatest job. So that way I didn't answer the question, I just said something totally irrelevant. Okay, but hey, if you're a lib who watches MSNBC, and you're super excited that we caught the Republicans in a moment of hypocrisy, well, the same goes for Biden and all of his supporters. So why was it terrible when Trump did it and awesome when Biden does it? When it's the same exact thing.
Exactly.
So now your turn to put your eyes down and pretend that it wasn't a good question. No, when they do the same thing, it's equally bad, even if their name has a D after it. And also the one last giant political mistake from Biden on this same issue is now when you do the same thing as Trump, you now cannot criticize him ever again on that issue.
But he will. That's the thing.
No, I don't even think he will. I think Joy Reid will on MSNBC, and she won't tell her audience that Biden did the same thing.
Oh, for sure.
Right, yeah. And I just picked Joy's name out of a hat, but just almost everybody on MSNBC will do that. But Biden himself wouldn't attack a Republican if his life depended on it anyway. So I guess you're not losing much because he wasn't going to attack him in the first place.
Let's give you guys all an update on the writers' strike that started this week and continues.
David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, which is the parent company of the network I'm talking to you on right now, was paid $250 million last year, $250 million. That's about the same level as what 10,000 writers are asking him to pay all of us collectively, all right? So I would say if you're being paid $250 million, Ted Sarandos made about $50 million last year. These companies are making enormous amounts of money. Their profits are going up. It's ridiculous for them to plead poverty when the writers who are making their shows, some of them are not able to pay their rent or their mortgages.
You just heard from writer Adam Conover just ripping the CEO of Warner Discovery apart on CNN, which of course is, owned by Warner Discovery. So with that said, the members of WGA, of course, went on strike beginning Monday of this week. And they've been on strike for 3 days now, and there seems to be no end in sight. And what they want is better pay, of course, and also something to be done ahead of time to regulate the introduction of AI technology into the entertainment industry. Now, I do want to watch a little more from that interview, but before we do, Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah, look, that takes courage to say that. He did it in a way that was smart, strategic. He waited till a little bit later in the interview, established an amiable relationship, and then hit her with a truth bomb that is impossible to deny. You say you don't have enough money. Jesus, one guy at the head of one company made all the money we're asking for, right? So it's an inarguable point. There's a great line that the anchor had at the end that I want to tell you about later, but more of the story.
Well, why don't we watch more of this exchange?
So the studios and the streamers have tried to turn television writing from a career into a gig job. Writer pay has fallen by 23% over the past 10 years. Even though the company profits have gone up by 50%, they're spending more money than ever on making these shows. They're making more profit from them than ever. But writers are making less money. They're employing us for less time. The studios are trying to eliminate the writer's room. You're probably familiar with the term, the writer's room. This is a room that's existed for decades where writers get together and break a story and write scripts. The companies are trying to eliminate it. They're trying to make the room smaller. They're trying to employ us on a freelance basis. They'd rather we just stay home and email scripts in and they pay us a fee every once in a while. And we can't make a living that way. And so our proposals are to ensure that there's a writer's room on every single show. And they have refused to even discuss that proposal with us. Another sticking point is that we want to make sure that writers are paid the same in streaming as they are on television. My first show was for True TV. My second show was for Netflix. The show had the exact same format, but on Netflix, we had no minimums, we had no protections, we were paid less. The residuals are literally 1% of what they were.
Yeah, I mean, everything that he said there is true. In fact, I mean, we live in Los Angeles. I have friends in the entertainment industry. In fact, one of my friends who's an actor, a pretty successful one, wanted to share his thoughts on this, but of course there's some concern about retaliation. Not a writer, an actor, but even actors are impacted by this, right? So I wanna read what the experience has been so far. I know SAG-AFTRA was super weak on negotiating streaming residuals many years/contracts ago because they thought everything was going to stay DVD Blu-ray back in the day. But if I had my current career 15 years ago, I wouldn't have to work a day job based on pre-streaming residuals alone. Now, however, my streaming residuals are literally pennies on the dollar versus previous terrestrial residual income. He also made a really interesting point about the last writer's strike and what happened. Basically, during the last writer's strike, when you didn't have writers, that's all of a sudden the studio started putting out reality shows where you don't need the writers. Yep. And that's when reality shows started to really blow up, including The Apprentice. And that gave a platform to Donald Trump, who of course became more of a household name.
Yeah, and then fought against workers' rights and created this vicious circle.
Exactly.
It's just a tiny little, consequence. It's not really a consequence of it. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. They were right to go on strike. And
absolutely, yes.
It's just ironic little thing there.
Maybe better to just avoid having the writers need to go on strike. Maybe work out a deal that's workable with the actual writers here.
Yeah, so look, Netflix is not yet profitable, but Amazon was not profitable for a long time and then became enormously profitable. And that's because they get tons and tons of investor money. You can't say, hey, look, I'm not profitable, but then pay your CEO $50 million, right? And they pay giant sums of money for these projects that they buy on Netflix and all the other streaming services, especially the top comedians, just to do anti-trans jokes. You get like I don't know, $1 million per anti-trans joke, I think, for the comedians on Netflix, etc. But anyways, so it's not like they don't have money to throw around. They just don't want to give it to the writers.
Yep.
So you have to be very clear about that. And then Adam Conover, just brilliant job in that interview. And at the end, the anchor on CNN, owned by Warner Discovery, goes, because if you remember, Adam's show was called Adam Ruins Everything, okay? And so the anchor was like, Adam, thank you for coming on and ruining my career as well.
It's hilarious.
Which is really funny, right? So give the anchor credit there.
So a few more updates. So as I mentioned, the strike began Monday of this week. There could be even more pain ahead for the studios, but for now, the way they're performing in the stock market's not so great. So yesterday, May 3rd, for instance, the share values of several entertainment companies dropped, amassing a loss of $10 billion for brands such as Paramount Global, Comcast, AMC Networks. However, companies such as Netflix, Disney, and Warner Brothers Discovery remained stable or managed to increase the value of their shares slightly. That being said, the entire stock market was in fact down that day, so I'm sure that's part of the equation as well. Now, furthermore, if the studios fail to reach an agreement with the WGA soon, then they could have a lot more trouble on their hands because there are others that are looking to strike. So let's talk about that. SAG-AFTRA and the Directors Guild of America have contracts that prohibit them from joining the writers' strike, but both of their contracts end on June 30th. Their solidarity could fully shut down Hollywood and make executives agree to the writers' demands. And negotiations are about to start. DGA starts negotiations on May 10th and SAG-AFTRA's start on June 7th, so buckle up. Going back to my friend, he commented on this as well, and he says, regardless, these greedy corporations have to adjust and kick down. DGA and SAG-AFTRA contracts are up in June. If the studios and networks don't sort out the WGA deal, the whole industry will be on strike and nobody wins.
Yeah, and then the stock market dips will be bigger and probably more lasting. But there is a good irony there, which is that the traditional cable companies and television networks will be hurt more than the streaming services because they get hit with a double whammy because people are already worried about their ability to survive in the new digital age, right? So I don't think that'll take in. I don't think that's a thing that Netflix executives, et cetera, will take into account. But this is a giant deal for all these media companies. And if I was them, I would definitely try to resolve it before June 30th. Because if all the actors and all the hosts and everybody else goes on strike, then they're really screwed. And so, but I don't know, short-term greed drives everything in the markets.
It is pretty incredible how much that's the case, even knowing that the short-term greed could translate to long-term pain.
100%.
Yeah. We gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson remaining the best of frenemies.
All right, back on TYT. Don't forget our podcasting network, easy way to check out all of our shows when you're jogging, driving, etc. And don't forget our newsletter, tyt.com/newsletter, best in the business. And for progressives, pretty much the only one in the business. So, but these days, we're pretty much the only ones left in digital media business, period. So anyways, check it out. You could do the QR code right there as well. And also one last one, Nina Turner's show, Make sure you're checking those out. YouTube.com/unbossedTYT. Check out a couple of clips. Check out the show live. It's at 4 o'clock Eastern. We think you'll love it. Okay, now I'm going to Twitch. A Trophy writes in, first of all, they gifted 5 subs, so thank you. Second of all, they say, Anna, I'm blaming you for getting me into Yellowstone. What a fascinating show exploring topics I know very little about. So informative too. Kudos.
Right? Yes.
You said the same exact thing.
Yeah, no, it's a Taylor Sheridan. I don't know what's going on with him and my zaddy, Kevin Costner. It's a shame, but I will say this: he is brilliant in his in the shows that he's put out there, and they do make you think. That's what I like about Yellowstone. There are moments in that show that make me uncomfortable because they challenge my ideology. But I like that. It's good to be challenged. It's good to think critically about your beliefs.
They add, oh, and your hair looks nice today.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful hair.
Alaria Amanita, which is an awesome name, said, I love my TYT fam. Thank you for your progressive views and passionate deliveries. We appreciate it. Roger announced says, I'm gonna try to work my way up to owning a Supreme Court justice. I'll start off by trying to buy a meter maid and I'll keep you posted. That's really funny. You know what?
Actually, meter maid sounds pretty damn good. Where do we get one of those? Yeah.
Okay, real quick, if you're a member, $100 Blue Apron gift card. I like that joke. Rewards at tyt.com. They'll verify that you're a member. And when Ben and I did the local news show where I was a TV writer, right, back in the day in Miami, we won an Emmy for a story we did on meter maids and how they would park illegally
all the time.
Okay,
all the time.
How good was that story? Anyways, it's a fun little story, but not a big deal. Won a lot of Emmys. None for me, of course, but that's another thing. Okay, Kyra Rune says, I know a 14-year-old that I would not trust with a butter knife. I hear you on that. I've got a 12-year-old kid, I wouldn't trust one either. Amber Jack 09 says, I worked at McDonald's while in college and I still have scars from burning myself working the deep fryer. I can't imagine a child doing that work. Cerberus Alpha Gaming, hey all, I'm the worker Cenk is talking about. I finally found a place with my brother and mother, but I want to thank you, Cenk, for the time you talked with me, helping you during your campaign, and watching TYT is what kept me sane during that time, and I can't thank you enough. So he's the social worker that was living out of his car. I didn't know that was your handle. Thank you for still watching. Thank you for all the hard work on the campaign, loved it. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Kelly Sowell and the great Mandini. They just became members by hitting the join button below the video. And Subliminal Sapper upgraded their membership. You could do that through the join button as well, and we really, really appreciate it. All of that helps tremendously. And everybody, you know, you can get our podcasting network wherever you get the podcast, but you could also sign up and get all of our shows on our website as well, that we read those comments more often, tyt.com/join. All right, Anna.
This is a pretty incredible story. The Washington Post is reporting that Tucker Carlson has been in talks with Donald Trump. Apparently, Carlson is considering having some sort of Republican primary forum outside of the Republican National Committee in order to, have the Republican candidates duke it out. Now, Trump is interested in this, and here's what the Washington Post reports. Carlson wants to moderate his own GOP candidate forum outside of the usual strictures of the Republican National Committee debate system. The idea, which he has discussed with Donald Trump, the front runner for now for the party, would test his vaunted sway over conservative politics. It's worth noting, again, for the billionth time, that internally, privately, Tucker Carlson has thought of and refers to Donald Trump as a demonic force. So now that he's out at Fox, he's been fired. I'm just really curious to see where he's headed to next. But I want to be clear, I actually think the idea of doing these types of debates or these forums outside of the context of the establishment could actually be really good, because I think there's too much power concentrated in the establishment.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, look, the Republicans have a better chance, if we're being honest, than the Democrats of breaking any kind of power structure, because the Democratic Party would never allow you to have a debate outside of the DNC parameters. And if you did, they'd want to banish not only the media organization that did it, but the candidates and punish them by not allowing them to be in the other debates, et cetera. But then when you ask for a debate, they say, no, Biden, it's not permitted to debate Biden because obviously Biden could get humiliated in a debate. So they're not gonna allow it at all. And look, I wanna break that blockade and we're gonna try super hard to break that blockade later. But to be fair to the Republicans, Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson break those kind of bad rules all the time. They also break good rules and good laws, but when it comes to a nonsensical rule like, oh, it has to be done through the GOP and in exactly the ways that the establishment demand, no, that's Trump as an outsider candidate, even though he was president of the United States, the establishment is not on his side. He's like, no, so what? I'm gonna break through. What are you gonna do now? And he's got a giant lead in the Republican primary, 20, 30 points, right? So, okay, you don't want to show up to that debate, then it'll be Trump and Tucker doing a giant ad for Donald Trump. So I can't stand either one of them, but I like this development.
I like this development too, because it is important, in my opinion, to weaken the current power structures that basically control everything, right? When you think about what the DNC, so let's think about it in the context of our side of the aisle. The DNC refusing, at least for now, to hold a single Democratic primary debate, that's them putting their thumb on the scale. That's them intentionally suppressing anyone in the Democratic voting base from knowing about Marianne Williamson or any other candidate who might want to primary Joe Biden. This is their way of ensuring that their preferred candidate, of course the incumbent in this case, is propped up. It's disgusting.
100%. And look, when Bernie was running against Hillary Clinton in 2016, they put the debates like late on Friday nights whenever there was football games, because football games are rate so well on TV. They had a tiny number of debates. The Republicans had a mess on their side, 17 different people. They had like, I forget now, but like dozens of debates. It was unbelievable how many debates they had. They debate after debate after debate. Well, what happened? They piled up tons of free media, all talking about Republican positions. Hey, is the extreme right wing position better? Or the slightly less extreme right-wing position better. But that's getting tons of publicity. Over there on the Democratic side, crickets, almost no publicity. So that was like $1 billion difference. And guess who won? The Republicans won. Even though they had a contentious primary with tons of heated debates where they ripped each other's faces off. But has the mainstream media and establishment Democrats learned anything from that? Nothing at all. Every piece of the media and establishment today says, no, primaries hurt. That you should not do a primary because that could really hurt. You're helping Trump. You're helping Trump. Okay, but wait a minute. The primaries help. In 2020, Biden went through a primary with 27 other people and it made him a stronger candidate and he won. Look, they're completely counterfactual. So now when you say, hey, can we at least get one debate, two debates, anything like that? They go, nope. If you challenge Biden, he'll obviously fall apart and that'll help Trump. Then maybe it shouldn't be Biden, okay?
Exactly. So let's get back to Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump, because there's this fun element of dissing Fox that I kind of actually enjoy quite a bit. So Fox is hosting the first official primary debate, which Trump has threatened not to attend if he can manage to make his grandest plan happen. So look, I think it's stupid to say like, no, I'm not gonna participate in the debate, right? Unless there's truly something unjust involved in the planning of that debate. In this case, if Trump refuses to do a primary debate at Fox and then ends up doing this forum idea with Tucker, I just enjoy the hot goss and I love the drama. So that could be fun.
So last two things on this for me. Number one, Tucker Carlson would have to break his $20 million a year contract to do it. But the contract runs through 2024 and this could be, well, if it's early in the process, which is it would have to be in the primaries, it would be early 2024 or maybe even 2023, late this year. In which case, it costs Tucker about $20 million. So in that case, Tucker's going to have a backup plan, and he's going to have his whatever his media enterprise is ready to go. And then he does the debate and plugs his new outlet so that he could try to make up the $20 million. So that's what's happening behind the scenes.
Okay, let me just also give the, I think, obvious point of Tucker, because of his extreme wealth, doesn't have to do anything. He could just go away, but they just can't help it, right? Like he can't help it.
No, but even for guys who have that much money, $20 million is still a good number that you're gonna wanna keep in one way or another. And then Mark Ajayi on Super Chat made a good point. I have a hunch that Donald Trump might get Tucker to run as his VP. Well, look, previously I said he's almost definitely gonna pick a woman. It's almost definitely going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene or Carrie Lake, most likely Carrie Lake, okay? I have a number of reasons we talked about in the past. But now, for the first time, I'm thinking, well, if Tucker does this, it's not impossible because now they're beginning to collaborate. Now, it would be outrageous for Tucker to moderate a debate and then turn around and become his VP.
But no.
But do you think that Tucker or Trump would care?
Guys, like, the thing that you say repeatedly about Tucker is he's a terrible person, but he's not dumb, he's a smart guy.
Totally, yep.
So let's actually put this to the test, because if he agrees to be Trump's VP, he is not a smart guy.
Well, there's only one hitch to that. So Trump is impossible to please, and we know that Tucker knows that because of his leaked texts.
Exactly.
Right? And he knows that Trump will destroy him and ask him to do unreasonable things, etc., because he's smart, he knows that. Now, having said that, Trump theoretically can't run again if he wins the presidency, which would leave it to his VP to take up the mantle in 2028. And that is really, really tempting. It won't work out. Trump will crush whoever his VP is, and by the end, he'll look to execute him, like he did with Mike Pence.
Yep.
But it is super tempting. So we'll see if Tucker reaches for the ring. Precious.
Herschel Walker is insane and looks like did something illegal pertaining to campaign finance laws. We've got that story and more when we come back from the break. Don't miss it.
Back on TYT, let's go to Super Chat. Brendan Golden says, late Super Chat, but progressives should use $70 wages as a bargaining tool for Biden's reelection. If he could deliver, young voters might back him. You're gonna have to get $17 minimum wage over Joe Biden's political carcass. He's not gonna do it, he hates it, and Bernie doesn't have the stomach to force him to do it. I'm just being honest with you guys. Could someone else force Biden? Yes, that's theoretically possible, but it'd have to be super tough to do it, and they'd have to ignore the media, they'd have to ignore the Democratic establishment, and that ain't gonna be Bernie. And Biden is not going to, like, look guys, paid family leave polls at 84%. Biden would pick up so many votes if he did paid family leave. He refused to do it, why? Because he's a corporate goon, he's corrupt. He's never gonna do any of those things, even though it would help him tremendously politically.
He's a senator from Delaware.
Yeah, and he doesn't even know that he's not supposed to be a corporate goon. He can even pretend to do paid family leave and go, oh golly gee, I couldn't do it. But he can't stomach the idea of helping the average American, even trying to help the average American. They'll try it late as a total BS marketing maneuver, if he's still around by that point. All right. I mean politically. Apostate Alexei writes in, Adam ruins CNN. Maybe that'll be his new show. It's really funny. Athletes LLC writes in again, thank you guys. You all actually touched on a point from another member. It seems that these lawmakers want to expose kids to toxic working environments. How will they get creep coworkers and managers to leave them alone?
Oh my God.
TYT forever, he said. And you're right, man. I mean, it's not like there isn't sexual harassment already at workplaces, right? And then you add young kids to that mix, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Bose Del Santo, thank you. Croker47, thank you. They chipped in on Super Chat, we appreciate it. Real to Real just became a member on YouTube and said, I'm proud to be part of the TYT family. You've taught me and informed me so much about today's politics, and I thank you for that. TYT forever, I like that, it's going around, okay. Julia says, at this point, I'm almost surprised that people would seek asylum in this country. Man, that is devastating point, but pretty true. Nice comments here. Michael Malbon saying, Jenk spitting truth. I appreciate it, brother. That's funny. Tim Crocker says, thanks for taking a zinger joke the other day, Jenk. Always comes from a good space and wish you all the best. I know that, Tim. And I don't mind you guys joking around about me at all. We have fun on this show. Angel Eid said, thanks for gift memberships. Otherwise, I never have one. Look at that. You guys delivered for an angel. So, appreciate it. Every time somebody does a gift membership, an angel earns their wings. DX2069 says, all this corruption with the Supreme Court is just gross, but I can't say I'm shocked. It's so embarrassing to be an American now. God, I hate that it's embarrassing, but you guys are making good points. Corruption's out of control here. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Jenk and Anna with you guys. Also Gideon Dax and Daryl McClain, lots of people signing up today. We really appreciate it. You guys make the show possible. And Heather Van Stavern also upgraded. You could also upgrade through the join button, and we deeply appreciate that as well. You guys power us. Anna.
Oof, Herschel Walker. Former Senate candidate and NFL player Herschel Walker might have broken a pretty significant campaign finance law by taking more than $500,000 from a wealthy billionaire donor and funneling it to his own personal company, which, believe it or not, even in the United States is illegal at this current moment. Might not be soon, I don't know. But let's give you the details on what happened here. So Walker received $535,000 in political contributions for his 2022 Senate campaign from his friend, billionaire Dennis Washington. But the money was later wired to his personal company. Washington wired the money to Walker thinking it was a political contribution, according to emails between Washington's staff and Walker's campaign. But the cash was deposited in an account for HR Talent, and that's a firm owned by Walker that was never disclosed in his financial statements. And because the money was sitting in Walker's private company, it could not be used toward his campaign, right? So when Washington staff learned of this, they contacted Walker asking whether the funds could be sent to a super PAC supporting the then GOP candidate. Quote, we will need your assistance to get the prior contributions made to the HR Talent account in March corrected, end quote. Tim McHugh, executive vice president for the Washington companies, wrote to Walker's campaign in November. But the money was never moved to Herschel Walker's campaign, okay? So one more graphic on this reporting for you. Walker's Federal Election Commission filings show that he never moved the money, the $535,200, to a super PAC supporting his campaign. It's possible Walker could have returned the money to Washington. Insider, which reported this story, could not immediately verify if the cash has been sent back to Washington or if it still remains in Walker's account.
Yeah, so amateur. The way that you're supposed to do this is you get the campaign money sent to the campaign, and then you have the campaign use your offices and your estates, and you pay yourself from the campaign. Who invented that model? Donald J. Trump. So as soon as he got donor money into his campaign, he started renting out his own offices at Trump Tower for 4 to 5 times what he was charging in rent earlier. I mean, there's 1,000 crimes you could get Donald Trump for. They just picked a couple here that they're pursuing. But that's the more sophisticated way to do this crime. But Herschel, not very, I mean, Jesus, when Donald Trump's brighter than you, oof, right? But Walker's just like, hey, why don't you just give me the money into my company? Well, that's brazenly illegal.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, to be fair to Herschel Walker, are you sure he's gonna get prosecuted?
Well,
I'm not sure at all.
It's funny because when you said, to be fair to Herschel Walker, I thought you were gonna go to maybe an obvious point about, honestly, Herschel Walker thought that he was literally a police officer because someone gave him like a cop gave him like this fake badge.
Yeah.
Okay, so I give you that example to say he's not very bright.
Yep.
So there could be a possibility that he just had no idea what he was doing, right? Like, I think intention does matter. I don't know what his intention was here. What I do know is he ended his campaign. I mean, he lost, obviously, but he lost with a ton of money left in his campaign. So Herschel Walker closed 2022 with $5 million despite losing the bid. Question to you, Cenk, because I'm not certain what happens to that money after the fact. Like, he can't just use that money for personal purposes, can he?
No, you can give it to other candidates, and so there's a lot you could do with it. But that's the thing, politicians, in this case, especially Republicans, they're so dirty, they're so immoral. They almost never use it to help other Republicans because they don't actually give a damn about the other Republicans. And they don't care about any of the ideology or the bills that they're trying to pass. They're not even trying to pass any bills. Since they're all enormously self-centered, I don't know what Republicans do. Some Democrats do actually use it to help other candidates, right? Especially the ones that care more. That's what you're kind of supposed to do with it. You could keep it for a future campaign, but you cannot use it personally because they didn't give the money to you, they gave the money to your campaign.
Right.
And guys, like I said, there's really so many different ways that you could funnel it to yourself. And at that point, if you just put a tiny little fig leaf on it, oh, we were using, my house or then a new house that I bought as our offices and I paid $4 million for it. I don't know, like Washington loves corruption. They're not gonna pursue it. You just need a tiny little excuse. But Walker couldn't even do that. And yeah, it's partly because he's not that bright, but it's also partly because he's so corrupt, he doesn't know he's not supposed to be corrupt.
Yeah. All right, well, speaking of corruption, let's get to the next story.
I want to guarantee you, there's not one seat on that board that I don't mourn the loss of. I don't like to lose. But my opponent won this race, so I'm gonna step aside. And I had a good run, and I'm gonna take pride in my service. And then I'm gonna talk to my family about what comes next.
Well, apparently what came next for Democratic congressional loser, former Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, was a big gift from President Joe Biden, who has appointed him to head the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, AKA the OECD, in Paris. He's gonna take a trip to Paris, Cenk.
Yeah, and so look, there's two problems here. Number one, that organization is important, and so the more neoliberals that you put on there, and if you're not familiar with the terms, neoliberal basically means conservative, economically conservative.
Laissez-faire ideology.
Free market should rule everything.
Exactly.
In other words, corporations are awesome, and we should live under their rule forever and ever. So, but that's not surprising because Sean Patrick Maloney was a very corrupt congressman, and when I say that, I don't mean it in the traditional way that Washington uses it, where you have to do over the top, ridiculous direct bribery for them to call you corrupt. No, he organized the corporate money that came into the Democratic Party and institutionally corrupted all of the members of the Democratic Party. He was the guy in charge of that.
That's right.
So that's exactly the kind of guy that you would send to be your bag man at an international organization like this, okay? So that's one component of it. And two is that they wanted to pay him back for the trick that he did.
Yes, talk about that.
Okay, so there was redistricting in New York and it became a hot mess. The Democrats screwed it up. And at that point, Sean Patrick Maloney decided, you know what? I'm not gonna run in my district. I'm gonna run in a slightly safer district. Let's pause to note, oops, he lost in the theoretically safer district. But it was supposed to be a twofer. What that did was it pushed Mondaire Jones to another district, and he was a progressive congressman. And what they were hoping for was that Mondale would run against Jamal Bowman, thereby guaranteeing that one of the progressives would be eliminated. Now, this is while establishment figures like Sean Patrick Maloney are pretending, oh, it's a big tent and we're all family here. And I don't know why progressives would ever disagree with us. Why don't they just follow their goddamn orders and know who's in charge? But we're all friends. And then he tried to end the career of either Bowman or Mondaire Jones. It was a super dirty trick. And I have to confess, I love that he lost.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't want a Republican on that seat, but I'm saying if a certain number of Democrats were gonna lose, I would want Sean Patrick Maloney to be in that group.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You F around, you find out. They thought their cutesy little scheme was gonna be beneficial for the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party, and to see him suffer the consequences is nice. But the only problem is, in comes Joe Biden to save the day for Maloney and essentially send him to Paris. Now, he hasn't done it yet, but he's planning to, okay? So I wanna go to Axios, which of course reported this story and gave Maloney undeserved credit, as they should be expected to do, quite honestly. Biden has been looking for a soft landing for the former lawmaker who lost his seat in upstate New York after being pummeled by negative Republican ads, but helped minimize House Democrats' losses in the midterms. How exactly did he do that?
Yeah, okay, look, to give you a sense of how incompetent he is, he lost his own seat. Meanwhile, Mondaire Jones was forced to run in a different district, and he also lost, okay?
No, but he nailed it, Cenk. We should give him credit.
Yeah, and the Democrats then lost the House altogether. But to this day, the establishment media helps with their propaganda of like, but they didn't lose by that much.
I know, it's amazing.
Like they literally celebrate that. If we say things that are true and obvious, like, hey, losing is not winning. They're like, oh, you guys are so unsophisticated. Don't you know the Democrats are always supposed to get killed? And they didn't get killed this time, they barely lost. And by the way, even if that were true, what effing difference does it make?
You still
lost. Because once you lost the House, you can't get anything passed.
1000%.
But the part they never tell you is they didn't want to pass any of those bills anyway.
The markets love the gridlock, baby.
By the way, that is not an exaggeration. We did a story after the Democrats lost the House about how the markets were reacting incredibly positively, and they were all the lobbyists, the business interests, openly giving quotes to CNBC and other outlets saying, we're thrilled, gridlock is good for business, because that means they can't pass any regulations that would protect you guys or get you higher wages. We're back in charge. The status quo is great for corporate rule. And that's brought to you by Sean Patrick Maloney. And for us, we're like, why would you reward such incompetence and defeat? But for the establishment, kind of mission accomplished. So this is their gift to him for maintaining corporate rule.
Absolutely. You know, it's sad when sources that I typically would stay away from, conservative sources like the National Review, because of their right-wing bias, right-wing slant. But in the context of reporting this story, I like their headline the most because it's the most honest. Let's go to that. Mike Lawler becomes first Republican to defeat DCCC chairman in 40 years. Because that's the reality. A Republican defeated the chairman of the DCCC for the first time in 40 years. And who was that person that was defeated? Sean Patrick Maloney. That's the reality of the situation.
It was a historic loss.
It was.
And they thought mission accomplished. Because if they're not corrupt, then they're incompetent. So pick them, which one is it?
And it's his home state of New York. Okay, I want to also go to NPR's reporting of the loss. They wrote, wrote at the time, when Republicans take control of the US House next month, they'll have voters in New York to thank for roughly a third of their national gains. In the midterm elections, one of the bluest states in the country saw a relative red wave that led to a net gain of 3 states, helping give the 3 seats, helping give the GOP its razor-thin majority. And nonetheless, Biden had reportedly been considering him for many different positions within his administration before landing on the OECD. And by the way, thank you for mentioning how important that role is, right? Because I think, I'm forgetting her name, who was the head of Think Progress? Or of American Progress.
Oh,
why am I forgetting her name?
Now you're making me forget her name. Okay.
Anyway, she's disappeared, right? She got some sort of position that Biden awarded her, and it's something negligible. Whereas the OECD is incredibly important, and having a neoliberal in that position is not a good sign.
Look, last thing is, honestly, what difference does it make? They were going to put a neolib in there no matter what.
Yeah.
So they're just giving this guy a gift, but outside of that, they were going to put someone just like him no matter what, because Biden is not 1% progressive. Okay.
Exactly. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. I don't want to do another story.
Ooh, drums.
I just like the stuff that we have for the bonus episode today.
And what is it, Anna?
Okay, so we're going to talk about an interesting judge's decision in regard to renters who wanted a discount on their rent because their landlord is just like constantly sunbathing nude.
Oh.
So how did the judge rule, and what was the decision? And more importantly, do you agree with the judge's ruling on this? Because
you know what, and this one, it's not a political story, but I wonder if right-wingers and left-wingers would agree. Like the ends of the spectrum would agree. So yeah. I don't know.
It's a pickle. We're in a pickle here. Okay.
Well, so there's definitely a pickle involved.
There's a pickle. There is a pickle involved.
Okay.
And a poll. Literally, we're going to poll the audience on it. Also.
And a Frankfurter.
I added a story. I added a story later in the rundown today because I think it's going to make Cenk's head explode. It involves Joe Biden, Joe Scarborough, and everything,
head explosion.
And everything that Cenk hates. It's going to be great.
So come watch the bonus episode for everything Cenk hates.
Yeah.
tyt.com/join, or you could hit the join button below if you're on YouTube. All right.
What are the people saying, Cenk?
Okay, now we go to you guys for your comments, which I love to read, as Anna knows. But here's one she'll appreciate. We'll start with this one. Who's your daddy? 89 says, Anna's hair is like a Clairol package model, blonde number 57. Okay.
I wish I could swing the boxed dye situation, but when you're dyeing your hair lighter, don't do that. It's very risky.
The electricians writes in, Sean Patrick Maloney.
Oh.
I love that joke. It's such a Cenk joke. Sorry. Okay, now more members. Look at these guys. Ingram gifted 5 memberships. Paratrooper Chad became a member. The Fish Dancer gifted 2 memberships and said, giving a gift for every hit it has taken me to kill this blunt. Wow, you did it in 2 hits?
Nira Tandon.
Thank you, okay.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, London became a member. All of London is now a member. Okay, so thank you, London, we appreciate it. Let's see. I have all these comments normally all lined up to go. Chaplain Fred wrote in, Cenk, Anna, I do not know if you know this, but the Mexican President Obrador said 2 days ago that the US is trying to send the CIA and DEA to help stop drug smuggling. Obrador is not buying and told the US to leave Mexico alone. Wow, okay.
I know nothing about it. I mean, the United States sending feds to other countries, I've never heard of anything like that happening before.
Look, I don't know the details, so maybe it's necessary, etc. But my assumption would be that Biden is trying to look tough and
at this point, everything politicians do is theater. And that's the incredibly frustrating thing, because when it comes to drug overdose deaths in America, that absolutely is a serious problem that needs to be addressed adequately. And there has not been any real effort from either party to address it. We literally have hundreds of thousands of people dying in America every year now from drug overdoses, the majority of which come from fentanyl drug overdoses. You know, having Narcan and all that stuff is a good thing. I'm not against it, but so far that's the only thing I've seen policy-wise, right? We gotta help people. First of all, we gotta improve economic conditions significantly. People are in despair. These are deaths of despair, but these politicians obviously side with corporate greed over the best interests of the American people.
Swizzy, the Barracuda urbanist dragon, wrote, and Maloney ended up pushing Jones to New York 10, which knocked out both Jones and Yulee New, a strong progressive in New York City. So he did get a twofer for his dirty neoliberal trick, discussing that's absolutely right. A corporatist won instead in that seat, and now we're out of time. We'll see you in the members section.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day,